Just check if the microphone is on. Yes. Thank you very much. And it's a genuine pleasure to be here, President Grimson, and all of you at the Arctic Circle, distinguished guests and friends across the room. And it's a pleasure to be here representing the new government in the United Kingdom. And it's been fantastic to be part of some fascinating discussions yesterday following my visit with my ministerial colleague in Tromsø at the From Centre in Norway, in Oslo, and then here in Reykjavik, and meeting with many colleagues from across the Arctic region. And I'm glad of the opportunity to be able to say a few words to you about the UK's valuable work with all of you as fellow friends of the Arctic. And I reflect on many of my own personal relationships with people and communities across this incredible region. I have friends from Iqaluit to Nuuk, from Tromsø to Tórshavn, and here in Reykjavik too. And I reflect back on a moment I spent as a 19-year-old in Finnish Lapland in the Millennium New Year's Eve, in a little cabin in the snow in minus 25, enjoying the sauna and some skiing. But like many that night, I thought a lot about the world, the future of the world in this century, my place in it, and what the future might hold. And as I sat there amid the incredible beauty and peace, little could I have imagined how the world would look nearly a quarter of a century on. And with Putin's war raging on the European continent and all of the implications that brings for regional and global security, and with climate change and biodiversity loss advancing at such a frightening pace, wrecking precious ecosystems and destroying livelihoods, and with me as a British minister responsible for Europe, North America, and indeed our relations in the polar regions, I am very conscious that I have to work with all of you to address those challenges. And of course, that's a daunting responsibility, but it's also an immense privilege to hold this role and to be here with you all, united in concern and care for the Arctic and indeed both polar regions, and determined to navigate the challenges ahead in a spirit of cooperation and respect. So there are three areas I wanted to focus on briefly with you today. Firstly, our relationships. Secondly, our shared security. And thirdly, our efforts to tackle the climate and nature crisis. Firstly, let me confirm to you that the new government in the UK is putting internationalism and multilateralism at the heart of all that we do. We are resetting and deepening relationships with friends in Europe and beyond, many here in this room, to better face global challenges. The UK Arctic policy framework continues to guide our approach, and we will continue to update and develop that guided by science and indeed the strategic challenges that we face. And as it makes clear, we are committed to the Arctic Council as in our role as a state observer, recognising it's been at the heart of a stable and peaceful region for much of the past 3 decades. And indeed, the Council has an important role to play in articulating a strong voice and delivering effective governance. It has the potential to act as a multilateral glue with the strength to bind together a fragmented world. So our objectives for the Council are characterised by strong cooperation, constructive dialogue, objectives I think we all share in this room. And I commend Norway's work as chair of the Council to restart the technical engagement in the face of the very significant geopolitical challenges. And we will do what we can to further those efforts as part of our commitments to the multilateral system. But we're, of course, not naive. And indeed, the security of the Arctic is clearly at risk. And the impact of Putin's illegal war in Ukraine cannot be underestimated, let alone the wider geopolitical cooperation and competition landscape, and that will impact on all of us in this important region. So alongside our resolute support for Ukraine, we are working tirelessly with partners for peace, security and stability, and particularly for all of those areas of Europe on what I call the flanks, including the Western Balkans, the Nordic states and beyond. We recognise Russia's rights and role as an Arctic state, but we will not tolerate attempts to wreck regional stability, disrupt critical infrastructure, or restrict freedom of navigation. There is no global security without Arctic security. So we are ready to protect and, if necessary, assert our rights. And on Wednesday, I was privileged to take a tour with the Norwegian Coast Guard in Tromsø to see how security threats and environmental challenges are monitored in the High North. They have a tough job in tough conditions, and all credit to them. And as someone who's participated alongside our training with Royal Marines in northern Norway, I have huge respect for all of those who regularly brave the Arctic wilderness to ensure we're ready to protect it. And let me be clear that UK's commitment to NATO, to the Joint Expeditionary Force, the Northern Group, and the Arctic Security Forces Roundtable is ironclad, including, of course, our close partnerships with our host, Iceland. And the NATO alliance is of particular significance to me personally. Many of my members of my family have served in NATO operations over many years, standing shoulder to shoulder with allies. Of course, beyond Putin's menace, climate change and the global marine and biodiversity loss that we are tragically seeing is the other immense threat that we're all discussing here looming over the Arctic. And we're witnessing devastating impacts on glaciers, on fish stocks, on weather patterns with implications for us all. And we're painfully aware that global warming is driving geopolitical competition over resources beneath the ice too. And so that's why my colleague, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, made clear in his first major policy speech last month that efforts to address the climate and nature crisis are central to our new government's work. So at COP29, we will press the global community to accelerate ambition to reduce our emissions and push for an agreement on an ambitious new climate finance goal. And we've also seen how research to understand and assess climate change, including through the Arctic Council, has been an important basis to build collaboration, and we will continue to back this. We've already invested over £135 million in Arctic research over the last decade, including through UK Centres of Expertise. Our Royal Research ship, Sir David Attenborough, paid its first visit to Greenland over the summer, and I was delighted to hear about their work here last night. That data gathered will help us understand crucial changes and their impacts on the Arctic Ocean and beyond. And our Advanced Research and Innovation Agency has launched an £81 million call for proposals for further research around Greenland. This new programme will develop an early warning system for tipping points, providing climate data of local and global importance. And we're committed to further funds to collaborations with Arctic Council working groups, helping enhance the understanding of climate impacts on the livelihoods of Arctic indigenous people, including many other things. And I think it's important to say here that while we tend to focus on modern science for solutions, indigenous knowledge often holds the key to understanding and responding to the climate and nature crises, on top of the absolute necessity of working in respect and partnership with all of those communities and peoples who live in these wonderful lands, understand these lands, and steward their resources and indeed their beauty. So further research will be key, and we'll build on our programmes, for example, with Canada and the Inuit Nunavut, which is looking into climate-driven changes in the Arctic homeland, as well as impacts on health and well-being. And it's been delighted to meet representatives of communities from across the Arctic at this fantastic conference. So this is just a brief flavour of our work, of our partnerships, of our hope for the future. But let me say in conclusion that the future of the Arctic depends on every one of us working together in a spirit of strong collaboration and cooperation. And I hope that when we look back 25 years from now, it'll be from the perspective of a more secure, peaceful and indeed sustainable era, not least here in the Arctic, but also globally. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Minister, for this statement, and we especially welcome you to the Assembly representing the new British government. And I'm not saying that because I'm taking sides in British politics, although since my student days in Britain, I've taken a strong personal interest in the ups and downs of British politics. But let me start by the sort of observation that if we look at the Arctic Circle Assemblies from 2013, the Westminster government has been largely absent, whereas we have seen various representation from France, Germany, even some other European countries, but very strong from Japan, Korea, Singapore, India, of course China as well. And I used to say to some previous leaders at Westminster that there was a whole continent north of the United Kingdom, because if you add all the Arctic up, it's of continental proportions. Mm-hmm. It's almost the size of Africa. Mm-hmm. And it was always very perplexing to me, as having studied in Britain and worked in Britain for now over half a century, why this was, why this was. I couldn't really understand it. because it seemed to me obvious if you just look at the map and the naval tradition of Britain and the science tradition of Britain and some of the security issues as well, that this vast territory north of Britain, which we call the Arctic, but basically is a misleading term because it's of continental proportion. So can you enlighten us why you think your new government will take a new enhanced role, not just because of the war in Ukraine and security and everything else, but because of the wider issues of this and what Britain has to contribute, also in economic terms.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a crucial question. I think I'm the first British minister to come for, 10 years to this assembly. And I wanted to send a very strong signal about the intentions of our new government and our commitments to the region as a whole and to the countries and peoples that live in it. I think the challenges that you're discussing here, that we've been discussing, very much sit with the missions that our new Prime Minister has set out domestically and internationally, and whether that's in addressing the climate and nature crisis, whether it's accelerating the energy transition, whether it's the security challenges that I know we've been focused on, but also fundamentally about our people-to-people links, our responsibilities to this part of the world. And we're engaged in a reset, particularly in relations with Europe, not just with the European Union, but also with Europe strategically as a whole. And of course, what happens here in the Arctic is crucial to all of our European futures, but also to our friends and peoples across. And I have responsibilities with Canada as well, country that I spent a lot of time in as a young person, and also with the United States and others. So I think it's absolutely the centre of the agenda that we're setting out. Fundamentally, though, this is also about being committed to the multilateral system and to multilateral cooperation. And I think in an era of great challenges, it's all the more important that we are committed to that, to the rule of law, to frameworks which can enable peace and sustainability.
Okay, so let's open it up for questions from the audience. If we could have the lights up, and please put your hands up, be quick. We have a limited time. So, do I see some? I mean, please don't let it happen. When we finally get a British minister on this stage, there's not a single question from the audience. Okay. Anyone who wants to ask a question?
James.
No. Yes, okay, yes. Well, of course, we get a question from the British Parliament, yes.
Stephen, welcome, and that was a fantastic presentation, and it's brilliant that you're here. I really do congratulate you on doing it. Just correcting you slightly, we have had a pretty big British presence here at this conference for many years now. I came to the very first one, I think, and I've been to everyone since then. So we haven't been absent. But thank you for coming. It's great that you are, and your commitment to the Arctic is superb. Just looking forward, I'm sure President Grimson will agree with this question. Looking forward from now, are you undertaking that the Foreign Office and you will continue to take this level of involvement and interest in Arctic Circle conferences that lie ahead?
Absolutely, and for those of you who don't know, James and I come from different political backgrounds in the UK, but James has always been a great friend and supporter on many different issues, and we've cooperated on many challenges in the past. And you're correct, there has been a British presence, but I said specifically a British ministerial presence, and I think it is important that we as a government set that signal. Absolutely, it's certainly my intention that we continue to participate not only in this forum, but also in many others, and actually that we deepen relationships with partners across the region. I've met with friends and colleagues this morning from the Faroes, from Greenland, from Nunavut. I was in Canada just a few weeks ago. I was in Tromsø earlier this week. So this is part of a wider sustained engagement for partnerships in whether that's climate, whether that's science, whether that's energy, or whether that's security. And I think it's absolutely crucial as the UK is part of those conversations. We've got unique skills, we've got unique history, unique experiences, and fundamentally it sits with our missions for the country as a whole.
Well, of course, we could turn this into a conversation between two members of the House of Commons and myself, having a PhD from the University of Manchester. But we are, of course, very grateful to you for your involvement in the Assembly and the support from the very beginning. But in my comments, I talked about the Westminster government and participation. We've had, it's quite true, members of Parliament. But the reason why I asked this question, because for a number of years when Nicola Sturgeon was the First Minister in Scotland, she came to this assembly a number of times and made very impressive speeches here. And the government of the SNP in Edinburgh has, for a number of years, been very active in this. And it put us in the kind of position some people were whispering we had become a kind of agency for the Scottish SNP government. But also because I think Britain has a lot to contribute to this. But also, especially, which you perhaps didn't deal with very much in your speech, the economic opportunities that are north of Britain in terms of renewable energy, in terms of tourism, in terms of cargo shipping, in terms of using natural resources and so on. This is a new economic frontier.
Well, these very much reflect some of the conversations I've been having here this morning and before.
It's a new economic frontier. So what I'm trying to convey to the new government in Britain, I mean, if you want an economic revival in Britain, part of that revival has to be a new type of economic relationship with the part of the world which is north of Britain.
I completely agree, and actually, it's good that you mentioned our colleagues from Scotland. You know, we're committed to a constructive and positive relationship with all parts of the United Kingdom, and indeed, it was great to meet colleagues from the Scottish Parliament yesterday evening, and from all parties. And as somebody who comes from Wales, one of the constituent countries of the UK, actually, our ability to work together as partners, and actually also with partners, as I mentioned, I met with the Premier of Nunavut earlier on. It's crucial that we're building those linkages around this region at all levels, not just the federal or the national level, but also between communities and different constituent parts of our own country. So that's a key priority for us going forward. I can see a hand over there, President.
Yes, well, I'm getting the very strong message here that time is up. So if you can put your question in just half a minute and very short answer.
Thank you. The question, yes. The response, I hope so. I'm Steve McLean from WWF U.S. Arctic Program in Anchorage, Alaska, and an Inupiaq citizen myself. Given Britain's and acknowledging Britain's history of colonialism throughout the world, can you articulate how the new government is prioritizing the equitable inclusion of Arctic indigenous peoples?
It's absolutely crucial, and it's absolutely crucial to our agenda going forward. You know, as somebody who went to school with people from Iqaluit, from across the high north, from different communities, particularly in Canada, I'm acutely conscious of the challenges and both opportunities, you know, amongst those communities. And we've had some excellent discussions this evening. It's a personal priority for me. I was in Ottawa in Canada a few weeks ago and meeting with those whose unceded land that we have our British High Commission on. So this is a major priority for me. And actually, as I reflected in my speech, the knowledge, the understanding of both how to respond to challenges, but what those challenges are, is at the heart of those communities. They're the people who live on and understand the challenges facing their land and their people. So we cannot provide that peaceful, secure, sustainable Arctic without the inclusion and engagement of true respect for the communities, the people who live there.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for being here with us. Let me invite you to come back next year.
Delighted.
And to enhance the involvement of the new government of Britain in the various parts of the Arctic Circle cooperation. As we announced yesterday, I'm not sure whether you had arrived by that time, we're having our Arctic Circle Forum in Delhi in India in April. And then by the invitation of the Italian government in Rome in December or early January. So there are other destinations that you can be a part of this ongoing global dialogue.
Reykjavik is very nice.
Yeah, I know. But we are very grateful for you to finding the time to be here with us, and we are looking forward to your involvement and participation in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Now I will hand over to the new American ambassador, Ambassador Fraga.